Welcome to the 32nd reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Life outside of school. At 13 years of age, when first back in town, I was still very much the tomboy, dressing up in my Indian outfit and playing cowboy and Indian games with my brother. Famous for my realistic deathbed scenes where he tied me up with rope in the shed and tortured me until I died, accompanied by terrible groaning noises that would have qualified me for entry into drama school had anyone connected with one heard me. The whole Indian thing became such a serious obsession, often merging fantasy and reality. I asked Mum if she would buy me some brown shoe polish to rub into my skin so I would look like an Indian for the rest of my life. Her refusal mystified me. One day, I accompanied her to a household products display in the town centre. I put on my homemade Indian outfit of long fringed pajama trousers, once belonging to David, sleeveless fringed vest, plus a chicken feather headdress and a kitchen knife tucked into my belt. David and I loved using the shed door for target practice with any old knife we could scrounge. Mum took one look at me and said, "You're not wearing that, are you?" And I, of course, shrugged my shoulders, puzzled at why my mother couldn't seem to accept the obvious fact she had an Indian for a daughter. She did her best to talk me out of wearing it, but nothing could convince me. At the Hippodrome, I'd recently seen the film Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, and The Man from Laramie, both of which added fuel to my already fertile imagination. Because my real life posed so many problems, I easily slipped into other roles, believing they could be my reality. After we'd wandered around the displays in the hall for a little while, I spotted a boy from my class in school, a boy I liked. I realized my Indian persona was nothing but a fake and asked Mum if we could leave. She wasn't about to give in to my sudden change of heart, though, and I spent the rest of the afternoon ducking down behind countertops to avoid the boy. The last time I went out in public, dressed as an Indian, although it wouldn't be the end of my role-playing. Those first two town summers of 1955 and 1956, David and I shared, after the isolation of the farm, offered a variety of simple explorations. No admission fee existed to enter the Norman Castle, situated in the Upper Castle Park. We had access to the entire place, other than the dungeons, which required a parent, plus a small fee, so you could be led around by a guide and get your neck and wrists put into the stocks used for punishment in earlier times. The castle had 2 floors, both with many glass cases of Roman exhibits. My favourite, the Egyptian mummy, rather out of place amongst the Roman remains, a long-ago gift from a wealthy gentleman in Victorian times. While my brother made a beeline for the displays of Roman armour and weaponry, I headed for the mummy in its glass case, settled down on the floor beside it, and tried to imagine the person inside all those cloth wrappings. Part of the foot wrapping had deteriorated, and a couple of toes sticking out morbidly fascinated me. Not far from the castle stood the Holly Trees Museum, full of old dolls, dolls' houses, and other toys and furniture from the Victorian era, more my interest than my brother's. The concrete goldfish pond fascinated me, its surface covered with water lilies, edges shallow, centred, deep, dark and forbidding, as I imagined falling in to be swallowed up in its depths. Around the outdoor bandstand lay sloping flower beds, out of bounds to all except the gardener. As children out to test the limits, we delighted in racing up and down these, waiting for the inevitable appearance of the park keeper, who chased us off. "Parky, Parky," we shouted at the tops of our voices, as he attempted to catch us and give us a shaking. We easily outran him. An especially enjoyable game involved spying on courting couples. They knew we followed them as we peeked out from behind trees and bushes. They'd move from one park bench to another, but we'd harass them by giggling and calling out annoying remarks to embarrass them. Sometimes they became so annoyed by our presence they left the park for some more private place. Mission accomplished. Even though David's activities weren't always to my liking, I still hung around with him for want of something better to do. He spent what seemed endless hours gluing together balsa wood and paper aeroplanes on the living room table, then walked all the way to the park to launch them from one of the grassy hills. Time after time the fragile planes crashed and fell apart, but he took it all in stride and went back home to patch them up and try all over again. The River Cone threaded its way through the lower park, and we spent whole afternoons catching tiddlers and tadpoles, bringing them home in glass jam jars. Train spotting at North Station was another strictly boyish activity in which I accompanied him. Sometimes we climbed up into an engine room of a steam train to watch coal being stoked into the boiler. My brother spent so much time at the station, some of the engine drivers relaxed the rules. The summer of 1957, David and I tuned into music as a common interest. A favourite wireless program, Opportunity Knocks, with host Huey Green, introduced undiscovered talent voted on during the live show. We practiced singing pop songs together, scurried into the alley at the end of our row, sung a few bars, then into the next alley, my faint hope that someone would hear us and sign us up for the show. As far as being discovered, my brother deserved that honour, as he at least attempted to work at his music. He sent away for a plywood guitar kit at age 14, and once he built it with an expertise that surprised me, spent every waking hour practicing. The guitar went everywhere he did, even at the dinner table, whilst waiting for the next part of the meal to appear. The tips of the fingers of his left hand bled from pressing the steel wires onto the frets, but still he carried on practicing until he produced one joyous melodic sound. The closest I came to performing for a possible adoring public was to climb the factory fire escape steps after factory hours, all the way to the top platform, where I played Christmas carols on my recorder and sometimes sang. Up there, high above the highest rooftops of the surrounding houses, I became the entertainer my nerves denied me on the ground. The whole town of Colchester listened to my music, enraptured by every note I created. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.